Hello, everyone. My name is Adelina Rivera, and I'm so happy you are taking a few minutes today to learn about the strategy for Square for learning vocabulary. Some of you may also know this strategy as the Freyer model. Let's walk through what today's presentation will cover. One, I will describe the strategy and explain its benefits to all students, but particularly our language learners. I will also show some examples and variations of the strategy depending on the content area, and I hope everyone walks away wanting to try it with their students. I will also share some resources at the end to help you get started. So I am sure this has happened to you. You are reading along nicely, making good progress on your assignment, and even enjoying it a bit. And then suddenly, bam, you run into a word you don't know. Gentacular, tureen, to name a few. Okay, so I couldn't help myself. I found this TikTok and had to include it. Imagine students coming across the word rendezvous. Um, So all readers, young and old, no matter how advanced, eventually run into new words. And it's the reader's responsibility, especially a good reader's responsibility, to learn and remember those words. And this is especially true for our students who, one, are just learning to read. Two, are learning a new content or subject matter. Three, are trying to read at a higher level than their independent level is. Or four, just learning a new language altogether. So, what do you do when this happens? You have a couple of choices here. One, you can skip the word and hope you can figure out what it means. And you can do this by using context clues. However, sometimes our students haven't developed those inferencing skills to do this. So you might have to just go to plan B. And plan B is to look up the word in the dictionary. If your students can do this, fantastic and kudos. That is a skill on its own. But it doesn't stop there. Just reading the definition in a dictionary isn't enough. It takes more time and effort to make the word your own, and that's where the four square strategy comes in. This technique will help you learn the vocabulary words more efficiently and remember them for a long time. So I want to put you in your student's shoes for this. Here is an article that I found in News ELA. It's about the days getting shorter during winter. And the word that we will look at is perpetual. And I chose this because perpetual is actually higher vocabulary that can be used in daily social speech and interactions, and not just in isolated academic settings. So I thought that this would be a good word to practice using the four square strategy. So here is the paragraph where the word was used, and I will give you a few seconds to quickly read through it. Okay, so imagine you are a student, you are reading this, and you come across this word, and this text actually highlights the word in bold and underlined, but the complexity of the paragraph itself can be confusing. So it can be tough, even though the content probably is not that hard to comprehend. So let's look at the definition. Here is the online dictionary's explanation for perpetual. So now the students know what the word definition is. However, that is not enough for them to use it on their own in a sentence. So that is where we would have students use the four square strategy to reinforce making those connections and really learning it long term. This is an example of a typical four square format. The word goes in the middle, then there's a place for a picture, the definition, And just to reinforce that, the definition should not be directly copied from the dictionary, but should be words or a summary or a way that the student will remember what the word means in the student's own words. The other sections are identified as an antonym and synonym, and then using the word in a sentence. But one way you can adjust this is instead of having students write a synonym um, or an antonym, I might cross that out and just have them look up the word in Spanish. So this is a great way to not only highlight and value the students' linguistic skills, but it also points out the value of pointing out and learning use of cognates. So in this case, perpetual in Spanish is perpetua or perpetuo, depending on whether you're using the word with feminine or masculine words. In the next couple slides, I want to share how you can adjust to make this strategy better fit the content for your students. So this first example is a little different than what we saw in the previous slide, because instead of having students draw a picture of a tree, they have the students list examples of it and then non-examples. And I always love when we use the examples and non-examples because it makes it clear for the students to grasp that concept. This tweak in the Foursquare feature can be helpful when students expand on a concept they may already know, right? Because if you tell students tree, that's probably a word they already know, but you want them to go beyond understanding and go towards that application. And this format can be helpful in social studies when you're talking about words that are more of concepts, like freedom, or in English language arts, if you're having students learn the vocabulary for different character traits, or in math, like this example here. So like the term quadrilateral, it wouldn't be enough to just draw them, but to list, now you're expanding that vocabulary of examples that are quadrilaterals and then non-examples. As you read this slide, you're probably thinking, well, I've already tried this before and it is time consuming and students don't learn these new words. I totally believe you, and I am sure what you're saying is absolutely true. However, it is not the students that the students are not using the strategy correctly, right? So if it's not working, we're not saying the students are not doing the strategy correctly. It's not that the strategy itself doesn't work, and it's not that you didn't show them how to do the strategy the right way. It is, however, that we may not be following up after we have the students do the activity, especially if we only have them look at the word once. Remember that repetition is key to learning new vocabulary. Foursquare does work. We just have to take a couple more steps to ensure students get that repetition they need in different ways, right? In different formats, in order for them to learn and own those words. So in order for students to really learn that vocabulary, students have to practice and review. So a good way to do this is to maybe plan at least once a week some of those vocabulary activities that students can associate with those terms. So one is free association, where let's say that you say a vocabulary term and then the students have to name all the words that he or she can think of that are related to that term. So, for example, the word may be pasteurize. And then you say the word pasteurize, and then students turn and tell their partner all the words associated. So it would be like milk, clean, safe, germ, bacteria, process. And then you can stop the time and then have students share what words they shared and maybe make a chart of it, right? So that is a way to interact and kind of practice that vocabulary word. Another thing you can do is have students comparing terms. So like using sentence frames or stems, Venn diagrams, Students can compare and contrast two or more vocabulary terms that are related or somewhat related. So like the first one, this is I borrowed from a graphic organizer I used to have in my classroom. It was like blank connects to blank because. So let's say I would say milk connects to pasteurize because milk is what it gets pasteurized or something like that, but students have to make those connections. This is also kind of related to that higher order thinking of using analogy sentence frames for students to fill in there, but also just saying how words are similar or how words are alike is good too. The last activity you can try to plan for once a week is having students classifying those terms. So doing those open sorts where you give students the cards with the vocabulary words on them, and then that they are determining how those words are sorted, and then maybe sorting them and having a student kind of look at what their partner did, and then they're trying to figure out what categories those words were placed in. So that involves some inferencing and explaining skills as well. So all this doesn't matter if we don't allow students to partner up and discuss the words, show their vocabulary journals to each other, play games such as charades or Pictionary with the words that they learn. So when we're thinking about like Marzano's vocabulary steps to learning new vocabulary, there's always the part of interacting and engaging with those words. And then lastly, before I finish for today, we have to remember to check on the students' learning of the word. So we shouldn't forget to kind of quiz students. And I don't mean like paper and pencil, but just kind of checking in on them and seeing if we can ask them like, what's the meaning of this word, or can you use it in a sentence? And this could be at any time, not necessarily in the context of that subject. So here are the resources that I can send you. Please send me an email, or whoever is presenting this can ask for these. There's links to handouts under that pink star. And then there's a couple videos of teachers using this strategy or explaining this strategy. And then there was a link to two versions of the worksheets, one with the non-examples and examples, and one with the antonym, synonym, and the picture. So thank you so much for joining us today.